Hey, welcome to Lab, the podcast. Super excited today to be with V3's Director of Media Production, Riley Cooper. Riley is a Tampa native who loves and cares for his city and community, loves his hometown sports teams and vacationing with family and friends to go see those teams when they're playing in other cities. Riley grew up in the church, developed a skill and a passion for production and ministry. He's served in positions around different Tampa Bay churches and organizations and helped V3 grow and develop over the last few years, now becoming our full-time director of media production. Riley has a passion and calling to help people share their stories and lead them to the life and beauty of the gospel through storytelling. Riley, super fun to have you on this side of all the production and camera. I don't know how you're feeling about it, but it's good to have you here.
It's good to be here. It feels very weird being on the other side. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to be sitting right there like I normally do, not right here, but
Yeah.
we're doing it.
Yeah, no, it's good, man. It's been so fun just to see V3 change. And this is a big change because you're not only full-time on our staff now, but you have helped develop Lab the podcast from early episode. I don't remember when you jumped in, what number we were on, but we're like well over 200 now.
Yeah, I think I tried doing the math a couple episodes ago, and I think it was like around 70, 75.
Yeah.
And we're at 200 and something now.
Yeah.
So crazy. It was a while ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Has it surprised you, like, to see where the podcast has grown to and developed and kind of some of the people that we've been able to talk to?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I feel like when I first came on, this was kind of just like we were still just doing audio. We were like 70-ish episodes in, and we were still pretty recently out of COVID, so it was still like kind of coming back into like, all right, now the world's back going, and it was really like it felt more of just like, all right, Riley's working, he's got this amount of hours, and he needs like a couple extra to fill like his hours, and it felt like that's kind of what it was at first, like, oh, I'm helping Zach record the podcast, and it was pretty simple at the time because it was just audio. And then it just kept developing. And then we were like, oh, well, if we're going to keep doing this, we got to get video out there and get social media going and all of that stuff. And so it just kept developing and developing. And then from like the first few episodes where we talked to some older people and I was a young kid falling asleep behind the audio recorder to now where I'm taking notes and diving in and just loving getting to talk to so many different people and hear about how their work is, affecting the life and beauty of the gospel. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's cool to think that you did start out like a lot of these conversations were with authors, thought leaders, leaders in organizations, and we were trying to bring together this eclectic mix of voices, all people whose lives and work give us a glimpse of the life and beauty of the gospel. That's been the whole project all along, is that God is this artist who has filled the world with the life and beauty of the gospel. And if we have eyes to see it, you can not just look at it, but begin to look through it. And I've watched you develop that way of seeing over the years, and you've become an important part of V3 being able to tell our story, but also God's story and his story through people. So we're going to get into that. We'll talk more about Lab the podcast, but we also took on the Wayfarer Podcast. You were a part of standing that project up. So I want to talk to you about that and get your thoughts, but also just give people a chance to get to know you, because I reference you sometimes even in these episodes and people go, who's Riley, the producer? Yeah. So they'll get a chance to hear your story. And I want to start with that Tampa native part, because you really are an anomaly in some ways from the community, because so many of us are not from Tampa. You were born and raised in Tampa, and I'm curious for you, how do you think that shaped who you are, just left a mark on your life having grown up here?
It's a good question. Yeah, like you said, born and raised, and I think one of the special things too is I never moved, like even houses, neighborhoods, and my neighborhood growing up like really didn't have that many kids, and I lived a block away from my elementary school, so kind of weird. But I grew up not like with a bunch of neighborhood kids, but more of just overall in South Tampa through family, making friends. But I think if you ask anybody who's like lived in South Tampa, I feel like there's it's big, but it's small at the same time, and I feel like everybody knows somebody who at least knows somebody that you're close to, or have been friends with, or had coffee, or gone to lunch with before. So there's just like this like small town but big town feeling at the same time in South Tampa because you could see downtown Tampa from South Tampa anywhere in South Tampa really, which is like a big city and intimidating from afar. But then you live here and you get involved in the community and like you just meet so many people that somehow you're gonna end up knowing through somebody else too. And then obviously sports, like you said. I mean, my family's very sports oriented and love football, love hockey, baseball, everything, and so growing up, I there's a picture of me 2 weeks old sitting on the couch watching the Bucks win a Super Bowl with my neighbor and my mom, and, there's something rich that's always been there, around my family and, just our hometown sports teams, and as we've gotten older, we take vacations together, my dad and brothers and I, and get to go, support our local teams, and there's just something special about that. You don't see that everywhere sometimes, so there's a lots of parts of Tampa that I feel like have really just like shaped a lot of me, and so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. You bring a lot of that to our team, that sense of place. We have people on our team who are from other parts of the world, not
Mm,
even just this country, but like an international team. Obviously, people from the West Coast and the East Coast, and you do have that sense of like place. And I think that's part of what I've appreciated about getting to know your story and learning from you about like being a good part of a good city.
mm,
And I didn't grow up in a state even that had the same kind of density and proximity to sports teams. So
mm,
we weren't a family. We
yeah.
weren't a sports city. For sure, out in Oregon, we had the Trailblazers, but
Yeah, it's true, they do have a team.
yeah, back in
I
the
forget
day,
that.
Clyde Drexler was a thing, but that was like ancient history to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious from a faith side, because you worked inside the church a lot, but besides just growing up being a Tampa guy,
Mhm,
being connected to all the sports culture in Tampa and all of that, you've also kind of come up in the church, which again will come up later, especially in the Wayfarer conversations, because you have a unique perspective on the church, having kind of grown up around it
mm.
and in it. I want to go back like childhood. Was faith a rich part of your story as a kid, or was it a little bit later, like high school and out of high school, that
Mm.
you started to have a more rich and curious faith?
Yeah, it there was some really rich parts of my childhood and my faith journey, like you said, I grew up going to church every Sunday, went to Sunday school, and then went to vacation Bible school every summer, and I remember at a very young age, like, accepting Christ, but not I was 5 or 6, so I understood it to some extent, but not truly, and I'd say at a very young age still, though, I really started to kinda understand what that is and, got to see, some good examples of what it looks like to have a relationship with Christ, and, I remember around 3rd grade, my parents were both, leaders in the high school ministry. My brother was, in high school and a student leader, the student director and pastor, they were all very good friends with my parents, and so I grew up going to church Sunday morning, but then also going Sunday night for like 3 or 4 hours. And I remember I got in trouble in 3rd grade and did something stupid. Don't even remember what it was, but it led me to the principal's office, and I got in trouble for it. And I remember my parents never found out about it, and
Mm,
it was like just a secret I had inside of me. But it pushed me to like want like because I saw other people like learning about Jesus, worshiping, and just this movement going on in the high school ministry at the church, and I just was like, there's something that like is drawing me to that. And I remember being up in the balcony while all the high schoolers are down worshiping and just like getting to see what it looked like to worship
mm,
and see that movement go on. And I that's when I started to like understand worship, I think, to some extent, and really like desire a relationship more than just going through elementary school, as a kid. And so I just had this deep, like, just something that was urging me to be more involved in worship. And I think that's really where like a lot of my passion came from, to like get involved when I was in middle school, on the worship team and then the production team. And that's where like the calling for my craft really came. So there's something rich about that part of my faith journey at such a young age, really.
Yeah. Yeah. You did have like, I don't know, an early intuition probably that you of your craft, as you say. Like you've been involved in the technical arts and in production, and you kind of just happened into that. Looking back at your story, can you say like, "Oh, no, I intentionally started to be consciously aware that that was a gift," or did you just kind of go where the doors opened and allow other people to pull
Mm,
you into that and then discover like, "Oh, I like this. This is something God made me to use."
mm. Yeah, I it was in middle school when I started getting involved, and I had going into middle school, my brother was interning with the middle school pastor, and so I kind of was always around again, still always around from third grade now into to fifth/sixth grade, just constantly around the church and involved. And there was just like this, the student pastor was like, "Well, you should start serving. Like there's a gap and we need help." And I was like, "Oh, that would be cool." Like like I've played a little bit of guitar growing up. Maybe I could play that. And then I was like, "Oh, maybe I could play the drums." The drums always sounded really cool to me. So I started to try to learn how to play the drums, and played a couple Sundays at middle school youth group, and it was all right. But there was a need for tech. Like there was nobody doing it. They just kind of like let it go. And so eventually, the student pastor was like, "Oh, why don't you help out back here too?" And so then I started to help out back there, and then just kept. That's when it just started, because it was like my desire wasn't like to find a craft really at the time. It was just to help out, because
Mm,
like that was my happy place, because I hated middle school, like
mm.
just did not have a good experience. Um, and so every Sunday I was just looking forward to being at church and serving and just like learning about like the craft that I was doing, but also just growing my relationship with God. It was just my happy place in middle school. And then as I kept doing it and kept learning tech, and I was like, I like this. I think there's something about this that like I enjoy the most out of anything I do.
Mm.
And that's where I just kept growing the craft, and finding places and leaders to learn from, and it never really stopped. It kept going.
Yeah. No, it kept going, and from a young age, you, like, leaned into it. It was your happy place, and so you put a lot of hours
Mm,
into a lot of churches, into a lot of things, and I'm curious if there was a I'm sure there was a shadow side of some sort. In fact, when I met you, I don't know that you were going through burnout, like, early like, as a early young
mhm,
adult, but definitely tired and weary from just serving a lot and being in and inside and doing the work of church.
mm,
And so I'm curious, like from as you began your journey with V3, how have you navigated that? Because you came to us in a time where you were kind of weary of, I mean, you had been doing it for a long time, serving for a long time, and in
mm,
fact, kind of exhausted in the service side of it. And then you jumped in to help us scale something. But I've also watched your faith really come alive. Like,
mm,
how do you make sense of the refreshment side of that while you were learning an entirely new dimension
mm.
of your craft?
That's good. I to start back at the first part, um, like I kept developing the craft to where the point I worked myself into a job. And I was in high school. I was a freshman, sophomore in high school, working at a church in tech, learning as much as I could. And that's just where it kept fueling, like I said. And so from there, it was like, all right, well, how do we keep getting better at this? And how do we keep growing in that? And so it was like, just grow as much as I can at that church. And then I was like, all right, well, let's go somewhere else and see if we can learn more and grow the craft more and grow like in leadership as well. And so I just kept doing that. And eventually I had just kind of had enough. I felt like I was pretty burnt out. There was just some, I think being young, it also affected it, but being in high school and working in adult ministries, high school ministries, but as a leader at such a young age, I learned a lot, and had to be humbled a lot, I think too, which is a good thing. But there was also so many parts where I felt like I was being a leader, but I wasn't like being treated like a leader, and that like really harmed my faith at the time and
Mm.
like my journey, and some respect for some leaders too, to some extent. And that's when I just was like, all right, I think we just need to step back from working in the church right now. I had kind of just like lost the heart and the desire and like the purpose of being a ministry at the church. And so that's when I kind of was like, all right, let's step back. And that's when I came to you, and we had done some events before, and helped you out with some worship nights. And you had always said, hey, if there comes a time where, you need a job, call me, let's figure it out. And so I, I did. And then we had that a conversation on the steps one day, and just, it turned into me coming on at V3, and which was 4 years ago now, which is crazy. And from there, it was almost like just a healing process of a year, like being out of church, helping out with chapel at the time at nights. It was just like much more of like a small community, where I still got to do my craft and help others and become a leader
Mm.
in that ministry. But it really just helped heal, I think, a lot of the burnout, a lot of just the hurt that I had from being a leader and at such a young age in so many churches, and just constantly moving. I think a lot of times I moved so fast that I didn't like actually let some of those leadership values develop enough,
Mm.
and so I think that had an effect on just me at the end, just being like, all right, I need to get away from this. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's interesting what you described. Like, I think a lot of people who are leaders probably have experienced this maybe later in life or along their journey somehow, that you were performing, right?
Mm,
And doing good work. And so there was a lot of affirmation around you doing the work. And so you do the work and you get accolades for it, or support for that, or affirmation for that. As a young person, your identity starts to be very closely tied to that. And it's like,
mm,
oh, well, I am included because I do stuff. I am brought in because I do stuff. I'm a
mhm,
part of the team because of what I do, not who I am. And you,
mm,
as a young person, that's not as well formed. Your identity isn't as well formed in the
mm,
sense that, hey, apart from what I do, I get to be a friend, a part of this community,
mhm,
a person who has worth and dignity. In our minds as a young person, we're still trying to form those things. And I can see that being a challenge, that then it's like, well, I need to do more in order to get more and more
mm,
a part of that circle. And I watched that in you. It's been cool to see the other side of that, where you're just getting to be Riley, and apart from anything you do, apart from any job or impact that you have in a work or vocational standpoint, it's just you, and
mm,
you've become a really rich part of V3's family just because of who you are, and that's been really cool
mm.
to see. How do you think you've changed the most since that conversation on the steps, where you were like, I don't know if I'm going to keep doing this, and the job opportunity opened, but go back 4 years, and from 4 years ago to today, what part of you has changed or grown the most?
Oh, a lot. Yeah, the past 4 years, there's there's a lot I've grown in. Um, it wasn't that long after I feel like around that time we had the conversation on steps, life was just really getting difficult. Figuring out, all right, what's next? Because I'm graduating high school, going through my grandfather passing away right at the time, right when I'm supposed to be graduating, celebrating, figuring out what I'm doing next with my life. And I also just was like, I thought my future was like in the church and being in ministry and production, and kind of seeing some of that stuff just shift away, from the burnout, from just, I think the big life change at that time of coming out of high school. A lot of stuff was going on, and I remember quickly like making a mistake right out of becoming an adult and just having to go through the tough motions of
Mm,
that of all right, you're not a kid anymore, there's consequences behind your
mm,
actions. And um going through that was one of the hardest things I think in my journey, but it shaped so much of who I am today and helped me grow and just want Jesus in my life so much more
mm,
past what I'm physically doing with my work and hands to like actually like embodying it and then the heart. And that's where like that first year of being a part of E3 just started to shape me differently and shape the way I view my faith and just my relationship with God completely different from before. It was like, all right, you're a leader doing production in the church, so act like Jesus would and be a good person and read your Bible and have a relationship with him. It was kind of just like it was all laid out there, but there was some missing gaps, and it just didn't seem like very like cohesive. It
mm,
was like separate things, and it was just kind of like figure it out. And then like uh, coming to V3 and um, being able to be like mentored under you and learn from you a lot and go through like such a rough time in my life too, where you came next to me instead of like putting me down and like reminding me of the mistakes I made. You were like, hey, you made these mistakes, let's get better, like
mm,
let's grow from these things. And that's where it was like, all right, this guy cares about me on a different level than almost anybody else I think that I've worked under or had the opportunity to work with has. And so that's where it clicked. And we dove into some stuff and some practices and books and studies, and that's where like the whole what V3 is, vision
mm,
up, vision
mm,
in, vision out, like, and diving into what that actually is and like
mm,
how that is like the relationship with God, like looking to him, looking like him, and then looking with him. That was, like, so much more cohesive than, like,
mm,
"Hey, figure out like, read your Bible and have a relationship with God." Like, yes, all good things,
mm,
but, like, what does that actually look like
mhm.
to and that's where you came in V3, and it just that first year at V3 was just, like, huge for growth, and then, obviously, it just kept going the past 3
Mm,
years, and that's how
mm.
we're here today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's wild to hear you recall that process. I think that was the same story really for me even way back in the day of going like I can get it but not have it.
Mm,
As a Christian, I can know about God, know about the Christian faith, but it feels like it's bolted on to my life externally versus like a deeply centered truth
mm,
that everything widens out from. And I think
mm,
that that's the whole idea of the vision is Jesus. Like at the center of reality is Christ
mm,
and the reality that we're looking to him and looking like him and looking with him.
mhm,
That's what's real. And once we start to think about the gospel in terms of reality again, things start to make sense. It's like, oh wow, there's coherence, there's clarity to my
mhm,
life. And so the disciplines and the spiritual practices, they're not different, but they're cohesive
mm, mm,
in a way that starts to produce life and beauty. And
mm.
that idea of life and beauty, you actually put that mark on your arm.
Yep.
Like, yeah, why did those two words resonate so deeply with you, do you think?
Um, that's good. I think to start with, the saying we have of "It's only true if it's true."
Mm,
Something about that really stuck to me. Obviously, like tattoos and the beauty. I think there's an art to it and a beauty. I mean, it is a form of artistry. They're tattoo artists, and they're creating these designs, and then the craft of actually putting them on. So there's something rich and beautiful about the art form itself. And so I had a desire for it. My dad had some, and I was just like, "There's like let's dive into this and go and figure out like what would be a tattoo you want." And then to come into life and beauty and like being a part of this podcast, this ministry, the work we're doing, and it's like, all right, the goal of like the work we're doing is to express the life and beauty of the
mm,
gospel and invite others to have a relationship with him and know him personally. Like, all right, well, if that's like the work we're doing, like everything I'm doing in my work here and in my life, because I look at everything I do in my life as the work I'm doing for V3.
Mm,
It's not just simply the clocking in and clocking out for me. It's everything in my life. And so to say like it's only true if it's true, like, all right, well, life and beauty, it's beautiful right away. It's part of your life journey. And so something about it always just stuck out to me, and wanted to put it on myself, like, and so I think that's where the idea came from, is it's only true if it's true, and to live that out and express that truly. What's a better way of
mm,
expressing the life and beauty of the gospel by having it on
mm,
yourself,
mm.
like that's a prime way and a conversation starter for half the time, because someone's gonna wonder, oh, you have a tattoo that says life plus beauty. What does
Yeah.
that mean? Boom, conversation to share the
Mm.
gospel.
Yeah, it's bold. Especially to put it on our body and to say, like, that's what's true. Life and beauty. I don't always feel that way.
Mm,
It doesn't, my circumstance doesn't always look like life and beauty, but that's what's true. And that's part of what I think has been so fun about all the stories that we have been able to explore is in every different way, people's lives and work giving us a glimpse of that life and beauty that God
mm,
is at work in and through these mountains and valleys. And you've been a part of hundreds of those stories. I mean, we've spent literally hundreds of hours
yeah,
with brilliant people, really
yeah.
talented people, people who've endured incredible struggle
Mm.
and challenge. What has surprised you the most? If you could think back over those hundreds of hours, is there something that stands out that maybe has surprised you? Not very many people get that much time just to be quiet and listen to incredible people share their stories.
Yeah, I it takes me back to, like, the first few that we ever did where I was like, "I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't really know if I care much about this." Like, to be honest, at the time, I was like, "I don't know why I'm recording a podcast and becoming a producer, like, what I don't know what this work looks like," and at the time, it was pretty easy, and so, it was, like, pretty easy for me to check out of it at the time.
Mm,
And I remember at a meeting, you were like, well, like, what do you think of the podcast so far? How's it going?" And I was like, it's kind of boring. And like, I kind of want to fall asleep. Like, I feel like it's just not my thing. Like, I've never listened to podcasts before. Maybe podcasting just isn't my thing, Zach. And you were like, you got to listen, you're sitting there and listen to it. Like, there's something to learn from these stories and what these people are sharing. And so it clicked a little bit there, and I was like, "All right, well, let's actually try and pay attention and, like, see what we can learn from these people." And that's where, like, it really clicked, and there would be, like, a guest that would share a quote that I had never heard and was, like, so profound to me, and I'd be like, alright, that's something special." And then getting to do that over and over again and repeatedly meeting and these guests that are sharing the life and beauty of the gospel somewhere in the world, like, it's and through something, like, whether it's being a doctor or, being a school teacher, like, there's the work that all these people are doing is so interesting, and then to actually get to have a conversation with them and see it, like how is the life and beauty of the gospel in their
mm,
realm is so interesting, and there's so much fruit to learn from these guests. I mean, yeah, it's been incredible, but from the beginning, like, not really knowing if this is what I'm supposed to do, and then, like, actually leaning into it, being, like, receptive and listening, it's like it's changed a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool to hear you say that too, because I think that's true. Maybe even for somebody listening right now, like, why do I even care? Why listen to people have these kind of conversations? And it's not novel anymore. Everybody's having a podcast conversation. Everybody's getting like a behind the scenes chance
Yeah.
to listen in to a conversation. So that's not necessarily new anymore at all. I think what's unique about the life and beauty of the gospel and Lab, the podcast, is that we keep coming back from the same lens, right? To say, let's keep exploring in the world. Where do we see it? Where do we
Mm,
see the life and beauty of the gospel? And it's training our vision in a way. And I hear that's what I hear you saying
mm.
is coming into this. It's like, I don't even know if I understand why we're having this conversation. Now, over 200 and some episodes later, you're able to sit down, and it doesn't matter who it is, right? The baker, the candlestick maker, it doesn't matter. They sit down, and with an open, receptive, curious posture, you start going, let me pay attention and see where God is at work in their story. And if I take that posture, I'm enriched, and there's a richer and fuller version of me. And I can say, as a young 20 something, that's beautiful, right? Like, you have grown so much in your perspective, in your understanding and depth of character, in your moral imagination. All of these different parts of you are being formed little by little over conversation. And I think it's a richer way of learning, right? It's a different way of learning, right? A little bit of poetry, a little bit of question, a little bit of conversation, and long, slow, deep, over the slow course of these conversations, you're able to then go out and contribute in a way that you wouldn't have if you didn't share this time. So I think it's amazing, and a lot goes into it. What might surprise people when they think about your job, director of media production, making the podcast, they watch the video, you put it on Spotify, but there's a lot that you do. What's a part of your job that might surprise people to know, other than like trying to keep our dog quiet when we're doing podcasts?
Yeah, that's been a new element of of my job. I love Baxter though; he's great.
I'm Zach Elliott, Executive Director of VUVIVO, and we exist to express the life and beauty of the gospel in the world. Together with our partners, we are wondrously revealing Christianity and inviting people to know God personally. Our team accomplishes that work faithfully through art, literature, music, content, and immersive experiences. And right now, there's a tremendous opportunity to lead with beauty in holding out the hope of the gospel. And I want to invite you to partner with us in that important work. Go to vuvivo.com/support to partner with us to express the life and beauty of the gospel.
I think it's kind of funny, and a couple people who know me know this about me, but video editing is not my favorite thing in the world to do. And so after already sitting down on the conversation and then listening to it for 5 to 8 hours again and editing it and chopping things up and changing, it's just sitting down at a desk for 8 hours is not my cup of tea. And so it's not the most fun. And so a lot of people might think that, oh, I love doing that work. No, I
Not so
have
much,
learned.
yeah.
I have learned to enjoy it more, and especially with special projects where there's a little bit more creativity behind my role in it, compared to like podcasts. Like, it's like you're guiding the conversation and it's the guests sharing, and so it's not like I don't get to do a crazy camera shot or show this crazy scenic view or anything. It's kind of cut and dry, because it's a conversation. It's not a creative project, and so I've definitely developed learned and liked to like the craft of editing more than before. But a lot of people probably don't know that I don't like actually editing the podcast.
Yeah.
This one is actually going to be the hardest one to
You're
ever
like,
edit
I
because I'm
gotta
going to be
listen to
hearing my
myself.
voice.
Yeah, I mean, 5 to 8 hours for an episode of the podcast to put these conversations out there so that people can enjoy them. And it's a ton of work to do that. And
Yeah.
people don't always realize that. That's why we're so grateful you've been able to make it as a full-time part of the team, because for us to be able to share artistic expressions, conversations with like Paul Pastor, we just had this crazy rich conversation about his new poetry collection. For us to be able to do that, it takes a team, and it takes 5 to 8 hours on the other side. And you can automate a certain amount of that, right? Technology can bring some solutions, but like everything with V3, we're trying to wondrously reveal Christianity, invite people to know God personally. We do it through art and music and literature and content. And we don't want that to be done in a plastic AI driven way. We want a human to be able to say, hey, I thought about the lighting. I thought about the way you were sitting in the conversation to set this up so that as somebody's running or driving or sitting down to watch
Mhm.
this while they're having a cup of coffee, that it can be a rich part of their life. And that takes craft. It takes intention.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good point. Yeah, there's definitely a difference from knowing, like, the DNA of V3, the DNA of Lap the Podcast, and, like, knowing, like, what we're trying to get out of this conversation and help you guys get out of this conversation, editing it compared to an AI doing it, or even somebody outside of our organization editing it. There's a different lens I have, when I'm editing Lab the Podcast than I think a computer or somebody else would.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
art. And
Yeah.
I think I watched a friend sent us all a mutual podcast the other day talking about
Mm.
acedia.
Yeah.
And it was great. They were talking about it, but to be honest, I had a really hard time watching the way that that was done. I was like, my brain cannot track with all of that stuff. And so I think there's an elegance to lighting a conversation and providing good audio so that the voice and the connection between two people is the thing, that we're not putting other things in front of that. That's an art form to do it. I think you do it really well. You do it well.
Thank you. Yeah, it goes back to do simple things well. I mean, it's a podcast conversation. We don't need to make it crazy interactive camera shots and always constantly moving. And I think that's just part of like what my generation is so used to now. Like they have to be watching two things at once on a screen, and so I think I mean the whole point of the conversation is to like listen
Yeah.
and get something from it, not be entertained the whole time. And
Mm.
so it just making it simple. It doesn't need to be anything crazy, you know.
Yeah. Hey, recovering those older ways, that longer, slower, deeper posture, that's part of V3's
Mm,
work. That's part of why we did the Wayfarer podcast. We said we want to recover an older way of imagining the Christian faith, that it's not just a random collection of intellectual presuppositions or these divided, fragmented things, but it's a way of being that really is your whole life, right? And you were a part of the behind the scenes part of Wayfarer podcast and all the conversations. What did you learn, maybe about yourself
mm.
as a part of that project, right? Like 2 seasons, lots of hours, lots of conversations, thinking about reimagining the Christian faith as a journey.
Mm. I definitely learned a lot in general from the Wayfarer podcast and those conversations. Um, to go to the beginning, I think I remember when you came with the idea of, hey, let's get a group of young people together to talk about what life is like as a young person of faith. And from there, like just getting that group together and seeing just a friendship build between all of us. Some of the friendships were there already, but seeing just the whole group just become friends. Not all of us were friends before, and I think we now have a rich friendship. And seeing that form from it, just from you inviting us in to talk about what it's like going through the life as a Christian right now was huge. And I remember at first I wasn't gonna be like a part of the conversations necessarily. I was just gonna be again in the producer role. But something that always like I was like, I feel like I want to be more involved with this. Like this is like if I'm gonna send this to somebody, one of my friends, like I feel like I have something to share with them.
Mhm.
And I feel like this is a great opportunity for it. And he'd be like, "Are you sure?" Because like you're not used to that. And I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, that's a good question. Let me think about that more now. Because talking on a podcast is a lot different than me editing a podcast. And I decided to lean in and jump in and do it. And I think I've learned a lot along the road, um, specifically about myself. That's a good question. Specifically about myself, I feel like I've learned through the Wayfarer podcast just like it like be open and share things with people. You don't need to be so like reading off the page. It's okay to mess up and share those mess ups along the
Mm.
road too. But just inviting others into like what's going on is very special to me, and it shows like a real authenticity of just having a conversation with some friends about what's going on in this life, and how culture's saying do this, but us as Christians and people walking in faith are saying that's not right, and trying to help others and our friends and other young people kind of understand that too. Um, yeah, just I think being vulnerable
Yeah.
is probably the first thing I learned, which was tough for me. I think I was very like I wanted to be very kind of closed off, say the right things only, and that's all. So,
Mm.
all I want to say, and quickly I started to through the friendship, being able to just have conversations with everybody, it started becoming more just like having a conversation. Like there might be a camera and a microphone in front of us, but we weren't really thinking about that.
Mm. Yeah, those things that you've repeated like throughout this conversation, long, slow, deep. It's only true if it's true. Do simple things well. Friendship first.
Mm.
Like there is a way of being that is it's beautiful to share life together. And you described it with that Wayfarer cast. I think that was part of what was so fun as we get
Mm.
to watch that emerge. And that the point is not to have all the answers, and that sometimes I think that frame is what people feel about Christianity. Like, well, it's something that I can figure out, and I'll get it all figured out, and then I'll be able to like talk about it from having it all figured out. And I think what we realized is like, no, the point is not to have it all figured out. The
Yeah.
point is to follow the one who helps you discover truth and
Yeah.
goodness and beauty, right?
Mm.
And that's why we say the beautiful invitation is the vision is Jesus. And the wayfaring life is to look to him, to look like him, to look with him. And that's going to be a long, slow, deep journey along the whole course of your
Mm.
life. So you can relax and not feel like you have to know it all. How did having that kind of language, how has having that kind of language helped you as a young adult navigating the late modern dumpster fire? I'll say it, of a
It's
world.
pretty true.
Yeah.
Uh, ha hold on, say it one more time. I got caught up on the
The
dumpster
dumpster
fire.
fire. Yeah.
My mind went straight to that.
No, just having that framework of like, I don't have to be at the center. The vision is Jesus,
Yeah.
and I can look to him, I can look like him, I can look with him,
Mm.
and I can relax and know that this is going to be a journey that I'm going to go on the rest of
Mm.
my life. How has having that kind of language and framework helped you navigate that? I won't even say it.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, s well, if I mean, one, if you haven't, go listen and join us in the Wayfarer Podcast
Yeah.
conversations. Season 1 with, like, you lay out the we lay out that framework and kinda set out, like, a guide for, like, getting out of that dumpster fire and,
Yep.
like, understanding it. And then season 2, it's like, "Alright, well, we're out of the dumpster fire, but we're still walking around it. It's
Mm.
still there." And so we go through some of the struggles, I think, of that. Um, and so both seasons are super useful. I think they're you can go straight through them. I also think it depends on where you're at in life and your season. For me, like season 1 was great. The framework was great. The cave, the allegory of the cave, like understanding that better on a deeper level was huge. Because it's always there. There's always something like trying to lure you in, and that's the devil and just the world. So many things of this world just trying to always pull you away from something else.
Mm.
And knowing that that's there and acknowledging that and like being like, all right, yeah, I see that. I'm gonna move past it. That has been huge, and I think sharing that with others too, like knowing, hey, there's always like you're not gonna figure it
Mm.
all out. Like I think we say that so many times on in season 2 as we go through the struggles of the Wayfarer journey, but like these are tools to help you.
Yep.
We don't have it all figured out,
Yep.
and you're also not gonna master temptation and pride. Like these are all things that are going to be along the wayfaring journey. These are all topics and struggles that people are going to have in the journey. You're not going to master them. You'll develop great tools and skills to try to prevent from that lure, but they're always going to be there. And so understanding that, and I think acknowledging it is huge. Like understanding that it's going to be there, and you have to build up the strength and the tools to keep moving on past it and not
Mm,
get drawn back in. But also, there's grace in knowing that sometimes you're going to get drawn back into it. Sometimes that cave might lure you back in. But then having that framework and that guide and having people too on that journey, I think that's what was so rich about the
mm,
Wayfarer podcast is we did it together. Like we became friends and developed this friendship and bond that as we talked about and encouraged others to go on a wayfaring journey, that we were actually doing it and living it out. It's only true if it's true. Friendship first, like that was just living it all out. The Wayfarer podcast was great and just it yeah, it built friendships and growth and faith and tools and just so much for me personally, and I really hope that it did it for others,
yeah.
and I hope it still continues to do it for others as it's out there still, it's never going away.
Yeah. Well, and that idea of a wayfarer, I think one of the coolest things about it is it was nothing new. It was a
Mm,
fresh way of having these
mm,
conversations. But the idea of the Christian life as a pilgrimage,
mm,
as us as foreigners and exiles and strangers in a foreign land, that's just the text of scripture. And the idea of a wayfarer, I'm traveling through this life. This is not my home, and yet I can travel with a sense of home everywhere. Those are rich and beautiful old ideas, and the challenges that we talked about over this season two. None of that is new. Temptation, lust, fear,
yeah,
doubt,
those have been
acedia,
around.
those have been around for a long time and they're not going away. And part of what we said is that the point of the Christian life isn't to try to have a temptation free life
Mm,
or to have a doubt free life or to have a fear free life. That's
mm,
not real. It's to be able to overcome and to continue on and to live a life of faith amidst all of that landscape and terrain.
mm,
And that's a pretty beautiful thing. So,
yeah.
yeah, beautiful. Yeah, the Wayfarer podcast was great. How else is V3 helping from your perspective? You are a young adult. We say we want to lead with beauty. We want to wondrously reveal Christianity. And so we're making art, we're doing all these things. We think that that cares for culture.
Mm,
We think that that brings rich treasure back to the life of the church, but we also think that it widens the imagination of young adults and a new
mm.
generation. How do you see that happening from V3 as a young adult? How is V3's ministry distinct from the church, offering something that is good
Mm.
for young adults?
I mean, leading with beauty is very different, I think, than how the modern church is leading, and that's not a diss towards the church. Leading with truth is great. Leading with goodness is great as well. But I think specifically with a generation that has been they've seen the church and they've had kind of most people have had a distaste of the church. They grew up in it, didn't really get anything out of it, didn't feel anything meaningful or real from it. And then also they've seen a lot of ugly from the church
Mm,
in the past, past decades. Leading with beauty gives like it's something different. They haven't seen it before, I feel like,
mm,
and it makes them really like wonder why. Like, why are you leading with beauty? What's the significance of that? Why are you creating an event around an art piece?
mm,
What's the meaning behind that? And so I think and it's for more than young people, but specifically like this generation that has seen what Christianity is. They've also seen people say there's nothing more to this life than the materialism, and they're like, I don't know. There's something more to life. I don't really know if it's Christianity. I don't think it's just we're done after this world. There's something more to it, and a lot of people have some sort of desire in their heart to like be morally right and do morally good things, but they're just trying to figure out like, all right, what is like the real meaning of my
mm,
life? And leading with beauty and having these spaces that are completely different from what the church is doing right now, creating an event around an art piece, creating a conversation centered around someone's life and story and their work. These are just so many different ways music even, I think of the symphony, like, the amount of people that are that this they see what we're doing, and they're intrigued because
Mm,
it's different from what any other organization is doing, what any other church is doing, it's different, and so it piques a curiosity with leading with that beauty, and that's when it's our job to reel them in,
mm,
like, "Hey, there's a reason why we're doing this. There's meaning to all of these things. There's a meaning behind this painting. There's meaning behind this piece of music, more than just the physical, arbitrary beauty of that painting and music. And that's when they're like, "Well, I wanna know more," like and so there's just something it's huge right now. You said it, like, we have a huge opportunity right now with leading with beauty, with this young generation right now that is just they're sick of everything else. They're sick of the noise.
mm,
They want something real, and they see this thing that's just, "It's interesting. They created a painting
mm,
about Mary.
mm.
What?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's so you say it really well, like that beauty moves you to discover what is good so you can know what is true.
Mm,
And I think just paying attention to that reality, that's what's true about our lives. And I think young people intuitively know it. And you're very right. I think
mm,
that we're exhausted of like trying to make sense with our brain about like what is even
mm,
true, right? We're exhausted. We really are. And I think beauty is a really wonderful invitation from God to come back to what's real and meaningful, and beauty will
mm,
pull you in to help discover what is good and know what is true. It
mm,
has a we've read so many different books, but one
mm,
Malcolm Guite saying that beauty has a
mm.
truth bearing faculty,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not disconnected from
Mhm.
truth. It's actually has a way to reveal truth
Mm,
in a way that you might be surprised by.
mm,
So, when you think about V3 and the work ahead, like you're just jumping in now in 2025 to your full time role, we have Symphony Number One that is recorded and out there. We've got multiple big commissions from visual pieces. We're publishing more books. We published Wendy's poetry collection. You get to know kind of behind the scenes what's coming and what
mhm.
we're aiming at for V3. What are you most hopeful for when you think about the future of V3's work?
I think it's a little bit selfish, but, like, the space and the ability and time now for me to really develop the craft of storytelling and being able to sit down with somebody and ask them about their story or how, the symphony impacted them,
Mm,
like, there's something so rich and meaningful about hearing how something impacted somebody else or hearing somebody's story and knowing that that is then impacts somebody else. I think of recently Alex McKinnon on the podcast and his story and just like you would have never known this guy's story and you sit down and you listen to his podcast where he just talks about his life journey and everything in it, the ups and the downs, and just there's something so rich and meaningful to take away from that. And there's just I want to really get good at that, and I just have that strong desire, and I know that like that's where I'm being called to. I'm being called to help people share their stories
mm,
and learning how to do that better. And there's so much in the future for V3 with that. I think
mm,
with the storytelling and sharing just and on all these platforms in different ways and in-person conversations like this on the podcast. There's so many different outlets these days to share stories, I think, but learning how to really do that beautifully, and that's what we're about at
mm,
V3 is beauty.
mm.
So, yeah.
That's so cool. I'm hopeful that I share that, I guess, in the hope that V3 in the coming years will be able to not just share the beauty, the art,
Mhm.
but to share the stories of the impact around
Mm.
those things because we get to see it. We get to hear
Yeah.
from people who are deeply moved by
Yeah.
a conversation, a book, a piece, a music, whatever it is. And being able to tell those stories and share those stories in a beautiful way,
Mm.
I share the hope that we can do that more, and you're a huge part of that. So thank you for approaching your work as a craftsperson, like to take it seriously. The art of storytelling, the art of being careful with people's time and being thoughtful with the way that we curate conversations. I think you do it really, really well.
Mm.
You've grown a ton, and you're going to keep growing. I want to. Speaking of time, you're going to have to edit this whole thing. See how fast it goes when you're not there to keep my time?
Yeah, I see
Yeah,
it.
but I have to ask you this, and I want to close with this because we ask a lot of times people, how can we pray for you as an artist? I remember asking so many different artists that question, leaders, people who are doing really difficult work. But you get to answer that kind of from V3's side because you come to our staff meetings, you're behind the scenes, you know what we're praying for and like asking God for. If you were to answer that question for V3 and somebody said, how can we pray for you? How can we pray for V3? How would you answer that? Not maybe the organization, but like, what do you come away from those staff meetings, you get in your car and you go, man, God, if I could ask you for something, what would it be?
Ah, there's so many ways I could take that. I think the work we're doing is so significant in this time, in this culture, and you and I know that. Our team knows that. Our partners know that, and just specifically right now, I'm really reminded of it. But after our meetings, after events, after conversations with people that have never heard of us or have had a bad time, had a bad interaction with the church or with God and their faith, and they want to turn away, or they're talking about. I think of that video that our friend sent us of a CD, and like, I just remember watching that video and just being, like, sad at the end of it
Mm.
because I was like, they know there's something wrong, and they they're onto the right track, but they're just telling you to accept it and move on and know it's there and be okay with it, and it's like, "No, there's so
Mm.
much like that. No, there's a deeper meaning to this. There's something deeper coming from that." And in this culture, man, it's just there's just a drought, and so the only way to keep doing this work and keep filling it is to bring more partners in, keep growing the work, growing just the ministry or following. Like, uh, there's so many things to ask for, I think,
Mm.
and so many ways to keep growing and things I didn't even mention, but just really inviting more people to partner with us in this
Yeah.
work. Like, yes, financially, we would love for you to partner with us financially, but it's more than that. Like, I think I always think of why we don't say a donor, we say a
Mm.
partner,
Mhm.
because we don't want you just to donate money to V3 and donate to the work we're doing. We want you to actually like join us in it and partner with us in the work. Like, it's way more impactful if you're constantly in a meeting, constantly in conversation, getting to see updates of the work that you're partnering in, the work that you're helping fund. Like, I'm way more proactive to be involved with something, the more that they are inviting me to join in that. And I think we're trying to do a good job at that. I think we're doing a good job at that this year specifically. And so just inviting more people to join us in that work this year. I mean, we have a great chance this year, I think, to really use what God's gifted us in this past year, the work we've
Mm.
got to do this past year, and continue that and just keep fueling it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right on. I feel that it's so powerful when people partner,
Mhm,
and I appreciate you saying that that it's not just, hey, donate money, but the partnership when we know people are praying and they care and they're interested and they're helping. It's deeply important work, but it feels so great to have true
mm,
partners. So we have a partner brunch coming up. We're
mhm,
trying to do that quarterly so that people can get together in that way and be here in Tampa in
mhm,
person. And we do send out updates and try to loop people in on the upcoming projects, how you can pray, different ways to stay in touch. And then we've got big stuff coming up like the art unveilings
mhm,
that are coming and new book publications and all of that. So
mhm.
as the person who's producing all of this, if you were to invite people to really stay in touch with V3, what's the best way, do you think, for people to keep in touch with all of the things that are going on with V3 so that they feel like they can partner?
Uh, it's a good question. I mean, there's so many different outlets and places where, posting on Instagram, posting on YouTube, podcasts are going out on all the platforms. But I think like if you like truly want to be a part of the work we're doing and like have a proactive like part in it, like being on our email list is huge.
Mm.
And it's 2025. I know everybody's emailing you and sometimes you're sending them to the spam box, but like those emails, that's really where we're communicating like the more active like updates, like
Sure.
prayer requests, project updates, and then becoming a partner. I, and I can edit this out if we're not supposed to share it, but there's a partner podcast, and if you're a partner, like you get to follow along on that, and that's where Zach is going into like what we're doing as an organization right now, like the projects we're working on, and then also like getting to share some of like the DNA and the practices and the studies we do it like as a team and as an organization. And like that's if I'm thinking of like a way to get involved, there's nothing more than becoming a partner, keeping up to date with the partner podcast and keeping up to date with the emails that we're sending. And then obviously the biggest one is like actually being in person when we have these events, these partner receptions, these partner brunches, these events. Like nothing is better than actually being immersed in person to those events.
Yeah. No, that's good. And I think if you do want to become a partner, go to the website and you can find our little support link
Hmm.
there and follow along. All those are great ways. Follow us on social
Yep.
media. But
Yeah.
I think the email, I love it. It's old school.
Yeah.
Way to go, email on them. That was a surprise to
Oh
me. I
yeah.
didn't think you would go there, but I think it is good because we
Yeah.
actually they come out sometimes and feel like form emails, but they're not. Like we're literally writing those
Yeah.
in person, trying to say, "Hey, here's what to pray for." And one of our partners surprised us the other day in a really challenging moment of their life. Their spouse was facing a really
Mm.
difficult medical thing. Text us and said, "Pray," and we immediately were able to loop everybody else in the network to pray.
To be
So
praying.
yeah.
Yeah.
Riley, thank you for giving some behind the scenes time. I love that we got to relax, that people got to
Yeah.
know you. I can tell you that I am super proud of you. I've seen you grow as a person in your faith and in your craft over the last few years in a really beautiful way. And we're honored to have you be a part of our V3 family, but just the family in general. So thank you for helping us share and express so much life and beauty in the world. We literally couldn't do it
Mm.
without you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. All right. Here's to what we can't yet see. How about that?
There you go.